Good morning, Good morning, everyone, and welcome. And every day we rise is a great day to be alive. And my name is James Lamote, and I'm here this morning with Portsmouth Coffee Talks Morning Edition show. And we have our regular host, the Colonel, and maybe Leah will come on later. And we have Mark, one of our guest hosts, as well as Ray. Good morning, host and guest host. How you doing?
Morning.
Okay, and we also have a special guest with us here, Dr. Kalita Fairfax, Nicholas Fairfax, no stranger to Portsmouth Coffee Talk. She always answers the call, and we appreciate that, Doctor. We appreciate that. We see you doing many things. You're very involved in your city of Hampton, like we are here in the city of Portsmouth. And going forward this year, we hope to include some of the races, all of the races throughout all the 7 cities. So we're going to have representatives from each city, and hopefully you'll be available for that, or you can suggest someone we can bring on from Hampton to keep us updated with what's going on there and talk about the political climate there. But anyway, we're here this morning. This is like a continuation from last week, and none of you were there then. We have different hosts today, except for the regulars, Colonel. And we talked about the projections going into the new year and what's going on. And I had a tape set up, hopefully I can get it later, audio. But one of the things, I want to start with you, Dr. Fairfax. One of the things that we hear are being reported, the Biden losing support from a lot of the young people and minorities. And we want to discuss that, especially focus on the young people, since you're a college professor and you're around some of those people and you hear some of the things that they're saying, even in the midst of of an economy that's doing pretty well. People are kind of overlooking that, but it's a lot of other things that people are upset. And I think when you think about it, it might be bigger than Biden and Trump. People are just maybe dissatisfied or getting disconnected with democracy and what it's supposed to do for our country. And so, what do you think? Give us an idea of what is going on. You know, you're on the campus of Norfolk State, and you got a lot of young people that are in your class. I'm sure that are very vocal about what's going on and how they see their future. So, give us a little bit about what's going on with our young folks and what we need to do in order to get them to have faith again in democracy. Because if they go to the third parties, or I don't think a lot of them will go to Trump, but some of them are. If they go to the third parties, that's almost like a vote for Trump.
That is a vote for the Republican Party, which functions primarily at this time as an openly white nationalist racist party. So this is a very complicated question in that there are several different angles that as leaders we need to identify and respond to. The first angle is the historical angle in that Black people have always participated in elections when we have been able to. We understand that voting is a hallmark of citizenship. And so voting allows you an opportunity equal to other people to engage in the political system. But I think what has happened is that the messaging has been so flawed on behalf of the Democratic Party. And so my students have since the pandemic, have been frustrated with not understanding exactly what the Democratic Party is doing for them, for our community and for our livelihood, for a way forward. They're frustrated and not understanding some of the gains that perhaps the Democratic Party have been able to win because the messaging is so off and so flawed. And then the other piece I think is that people are looking for meaningful social policy. I can tell you my students are struggling with the lack of a comprehensive homeless or home ownership, or at least home sanctuary policy for impoverished people. My students are struggling with student loans, and student loans exist, you all, because higher ed education is just so expensive. You're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars that people go into debt. And when you are impoverished, you have no other choice if you wish to earn a college degree to secure a loan. And so you're already struggling economically, your family is struggling economically, and these are strong working class people. These are people who are part of our strong working class ethic, working class tradition. And so they have to take out a student loan. Even those of us who, may be regarded as middle class, you take out a student loan for your children, or you take out a student loan if you are a learner. And so you are saddled with what I'm going to use the term unimaginable debt when you graduate from college. And my students are really dismayed with the lack of Congress passing the George Floyd police reform or social justice reform bill. And although I think it passed in the House or the Senate, I'm maybe getting confused, but it didn't pass in one chamber. So it hasn't been able to move forward. My students are struggling with the lack of any movement on the issue of reparations and or any issue having to do with any level of equity. And so there's a really interesting book called Black Skinhead, written by a political scientist out of Chicago named Brandy Collins Dexter. And she talks about the duality of racism in the Republican Party and in the Democratic Party, and how that too is uh, uh, not allowing our young people to see some of the nuanced differences between the parties. They see them all as the same, which I think may be a little bit of why a third party candidate or a third party support may be in play. Although I will tell you, we won't win. Black people are 13% of the population in this country. A third party candidate, a third party boost, it's just not going to yield us any gain. No.
Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead, Colonel.
That's some interesting points, and I'll try to piggyback off what you said. And you talk about these young folks. I believe when you look at the polls, when they talk about Joe Biden is losing support amongst blacks and Latinos or whatever, you have to look at the propaganda that was been put on the Democratic Party and most frankly, President Biden, for the last 3 years. It is nothing but unmitigated propaganda. They've always talked down the economy and all in the effects of young folks, effects on young folks. So you talk about home loans, and everybody talks about the interest rates and how bad they are, and they're hit a 20-year high. But you have to remember that they have, if you really look back at history, they have just returned back to normal rates. Because 20 years ago, we had there about 9/11, which had the Fed had to decrease rates to keep the economy going. And then you couple that back up, then we had the financial crisis. Then they had to double down and put it down again. Then we had the pandemic. 1, 2, 3. They had to lower to keep the economy going, and also put stimulus into the economy. And there were different bills that were passed to put money in to make people survive. So basically, we have all gotten used to free money, and I call free money what was when you can get a house loan for say 3.5%, 3%, depending on your credit rating. That was free money. Now you have to pay back to the historical 7, 8, 9%, 7, 8%, whatever, depending on your credit rating. People have forgotten history. So the other piece is you talk about the Coletta, you talk about the young kids talking about the difficulties getting into school and the cost of higher education. Yes, higher education has gone up faster than inflation, but the Biden administration has changed, say, the basic grant BEOG application. They've simplified it. They've simplified it so that more people can qualify for that. And you have to remember that the Republican Party has tried to get rid of that program. So that will increase the cost and stop people from going to college because they want a dumb society because they have a war on education. And when I say a war on education, you could see the public lynching of Dr. Gray down there in Harvard for what she did. For that, she had one little slip, the slip that she had before Congress, where they set her up in this right-wing congressional hearing. And you look at the person that I can't think of his name now, but his wife,
Rufo is
yeah,
his last name.
Yeah, his wife did something more egregious. She was an MIT graduate.
Right,
and,
right.
Yeah, basically.
But that it's not about the citation.
It's not. It's not. It was a public lynching. They had a war on. They want to put to kill a black woman's seat at one of the finest institutions in America because she stood up there and she was not what they want to have seat on there. Harvard would do very well if they rehired her back and tell him to take his money and go somewhere.
I could care less what Harvard does because Harvard absolutely represents the capitalistic enterprise of America, and it was really Harvard has a corporation. Harvard has an endowment of over $50 billion.
Yes,
I really could care less about Harvard. We need to be clear that Dr. Gay's resignation was really due to racism. When Black women Black people enter into spaces that have never been meant for us,
yes,
we should expect. We absolutely should expect this kind of violent onslaught. I don't know whether or not she was really prepared for that, but we see it with every situation. Anita Hill, the treatment of Ketanji Brown Jackson, the treatment of First Lady Michelle Obama, the treatment of Madam VP Kamala Harris. So when we are posed to enter into spaces that have never been meant for us, with the ability to exert power, authority, and influence, you can best believe white nationalism is going to come for you. And I also do agree with you, Colonel, that although there have been policies that have been passed by the Biden-Harris administration with regards to the home ownership policy, I think we need to also push for policies that will ensure and create affordable housing. And I think that's another pain point. But the messaging is just so horrible.
Yes.
On behalf of the Democratic Party. And I don't understand who's in the room, who's at the table, not understanding how to ensure that the gains that they've been able to make may be transferred into, ways in which the constituencies can understand them. But the greater issue, I think, is that we've got to ensure that people understand that we move the needle in the Black freedom struggle. you vote for a president. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to have a come to Jesus moment. That never has happened. You're moving the needle. We are a part of the trajectory to move the needle. And I think that has to be communicated better by our leadership in our community.
Yeah, let me ask you, Mark. Mark, let me bring Mark in here. Mark, even with what the Colonel and Dr. Fairfax have been saying about the lack of messaging and everything, but it's still just like the subjects they brought out, about the Harvard and everything like that. That's still out there. People can still see what's going on, and people I don't know if they've forgotten about the pandemic and how that was handled. You know, and it's clear things out there that happened that were caused by individuals, not necessarily democracy in itself, even though it needs some work, but we don't see it happening. Why do we still have, the people dissatisfied with what's really going on, especially when they're seeing, I don't know, maybe they're not seeing what's actually happening in their face, but excuse me, especially when they can see for themselves, how individuals and how maybe whole parties are distorting the truth and everything like that. Why are we still, even without the messaging that needs to happen, why are they're still not picking up on what's happening right in their face?
So the poet laureate Bob Dylan wrote many years ago, how many times can a man, and I would say anyone, not just a man, turn his or her head and pretend that he just doesn't see? People tend to see, and certainly this era, the election of 2016 brought home to me in a way that nothing else has, that facts don't have the importance to many other people that they do to me. And it comes down to who the messenger is. And certainly that flawed messenger is back again, and he's carrying a false message. With that said, I want to say that I am aligned with the young folks on this point. Even though President Biden has done what I consider a credible job during his time in office, his age is off-putting to me. And he's only 6 years older than I am. But, I wouldn't run for president at my age. And I felt when President Obama got elected that not only was it a breakthrough in terms of his ethnicity, but also in going back to something that I was very happy about when President Kennedy was elected. Prior to President Kennedy, it was a bunch of old folks. And that was more striking to me when I was 12 and 13. It was important to me then, and it's important to me now. There's a lot of discussion in the 2016 election about who's going to be taking those wake-up calls. Well, I want to tell you that if I were to receive a wake-up call in the middle of the night, at the present time, I would not be at my best. And when the question is, do we use nuclear weapons in a particular situation, I want somebody who can snap into that at the moment and deal with it. Not with the fatigue of decades of walking this earth. So I'm very much attuned to that, and I'm in a quandary because I will never vote for you know who. I'm a never Trumper, but I cannot see myself voting for an octogenarian either. So the Democratic Party has a lot of talent on its bench, and they need to get them off the bench and into action.
Yeah, Mark, before we go further, I want to key up that audio I wanted to play in the beginning, coming from a young person that probably gets it, but stay tuned.
A lot of people your age who aren't super excited about a second Biden campaign, what would you tell them?
I tell them that the Democratic Party is the only party right now putting up a fight for your right to exist and to love who you want to love, to have the rights to your body that you want to have, and to actually make change. You know, I know a lot of young folks feel like the parties are broken, the party structure in general, the two-party system, right, is broken. And I would give them, like, when you're looking at how politics is run right now, it's really divisive, it feels ugly, and it doesn't motivate people to get involved with it. But unless better people get involved with politics, politics doesn't get any better. And I think that there's a whole movement that we have to change as young folks of saying, like, there's one party that we can change, though. There's one party that wants us to get involved, though, and that is the Democratic Party.
There's a lot of people your age who aren't super excited about a second Biden campaign.
I think the point you made that, as far as complaining, I mean, get involved if you want to make change or make a difference. You get involved with the party and make those changes. I think that was a good point by her, but it's still out there where people are dissatisfied. Ray, bring you in. Where are you with?
Well, I think it's those that want to know, those that are trying to know, those that are really eager to know will find a way to get information. We can't put it all on the Democratic Party. You know, we have to kind of look at ourselves. I talk to and deal with a lot of young folks too, and even mentor some of them. And it has to be in their hearts and minds. And a lot of them are tied up and pulled in so many different directions, especially those with young children. And they try to keep up. They try to, follow what's going on locally and nationally. But it's just so overwhelming. And knowing, I guess, as long as some of us have been in the politics, like when James and I, when we started back as seniors in high school, it was a motivating factor that changed our lives, that pushed us in our high school alma mater, that phenomena, and it takes something happening in your life to awaken you, to make you eager. That's not to say any of the things that's been said here is not true, but I always look at myself. I look at what I do, what I try to do, how I try to keep up, and it can be overwhelming. And young people are very, very busy, and I think that those that really want, those are really trying. There's so many things that are coming across, especially those in college. Oh my gosh, it's just so many things coming at them, that it's difficult. I think a lot of the messaging, that negative, we all know is made up. A lot of the polls are really too early to make any kind of calls. I believe that folks that are going to vote, they're used to voting, they're in the habit of voting. I tell some of the young folks that I'm mentoring about some of the things that go on behind the scene that I've witnessed and experienced myself, and it blows them away. They can't believe it, with politics. You know what I mean? The back room, the behind the scenes politics and things that go on. And I warn them. I say, just be careful and understand. Try to get to know the players. Try to get to know how system works. We know a lot of it's crooked, a lot of it's self-serving, but overall, I think, as I mentioned when I started talking, I think it's up to, as individuals, young people, old people, who want to stay informed, want to be informed. There's so many sources out there now, so many ways to keep up, and you have to learn the good, bad sources, and how to discern. That's what I see at right now that's happening.
The way you think it's, and everybody, you think it's, that's a big issue that the young people, or even some minorities, or people that are, dissatisfied, are just seeing the surface of what's going on, and what is crazy is the thing that really makes the news, and this is what they really see, and not knowing that there are a lot of people out there really doing some good work, as far as keeping democracy alive. And as we look about, in the news, it's about how many countries. Dr. Fairfax, you might be able to tell me on this. It's a lot of countries. This democracy thing is kind of global right now. Where it's a lot of countries out here that are going to dealing with democracy. You have some countries like Russia. I don't know why they mention them as a part of democracy. And there's a few other countries like that too. But they are set up on that premise, but they don't usually follow it. So I'm just wondering if our young people are just seeing the surface, they're just seeing the dramatics of what goes on in politics, and not really seeing or knowing what's really, what people are really doing to try to keep this country going in the right direction.
Yeah, there is a movement to assert a global world order that is predicated upon whiteness and white dominance, and we do see this in all that is unfolding in the fight happening in Russia. We also know that there's a war in several wars in some parts of Central and South Africa that never receives media coverage, which should tell you something when our media systems choose always to neglect news on the continent. And we see also the war in between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And so that is one point. I think the other point, and Brother Smith mentioned this, and I'm glad he did, is that the pandemic has somewhat altered the organic ways in which we interface to receive information, to receive feedback, which also provided us with ways in which we would be educated, not gathering physically in church and in organizational meetings, community meetings, splintered information and the flow of information, and then the way in which one received information and instruction. And so I think as a community, we need to ensure that we locate the best strategies and the best ways for information flow, in addition to instruction. In our community, you receive information and you receive instruction. What do you do with it? And we have got to locate the best strategies so that our young people can have data that is important to them. And I also believe we need to really be sure that we are providing instruction that is culturally relevant and culturally centered, in that we are explaining to those who really need to get to the polls as we do, that voting is a part of our Black struggle, our Black livelihood. It's a part of how we show what it means to be free, and it means that we're thinking about the generations yet unborn. We need to ensure that we're able to communicate that in a way that they understand that, voting is not even about that day. Our vote is about the future.
And Colonel, I guess you heard the young lady talking, and I'm sure it's a lot of young people that feel that way. But I just happened to find that was a short on YouTube. But you don't see a lot of those people speaking out or being, exposed. But one thing about the young people, their minds are still developing, so we have a chance with them. But what about some of the African Americans and Hispanics or Latino, well, anyway, the minorities that are thinking this way, and how do we get them on the track? Because what they're doing and how they're thinking now, they are paving a way for the next generation, and not be so self-serving that they're thinking about today and not the future.
Well, you're correct. We have a messaging problem. There's a messaging problem from the White House on down to state to the local. And so, but we're coupled that with a certain degree of apathy amongst the American electorate. There are some, and I think Mark had made a comment that he wouldn't vote for a Octarian, somebody who's over 80. But Mr. Trump is only, I think he's 78, and he'll be, by the time the election, he'll be 79, knocking on the door of 80. And yes, the Democratic Party has a deep bench, but if you look back in the previous election in 2016, when Trump upset Hillary, fast forward to 20, of all the Democratic operatives that was trying to get to try to ascend to the presidency, Joe Biden was the only one that would have beaten Trump. The only one. And they come out and they've all said that after the fact. And with Trump running again, he is the only one with any possibility. You can look at the polls now, and even though they're early, none of them would even have a chance of fighting to raise the money, one, and two, to have a chance of beating Trump. And this election is for our democracy. I think Coletta talked about how things, the COVID has changed how we, education and how we work, people working from home, and it has changed everything about our nation's society and how we go about business. But if you look at it, at least 800,000 people died in this country that are directly tied to the mishandling of the COVID epidemic by the White House and Mr. Trump. 800,000 people would be sitting at the dinner table, as Joe Biden said, if we had competent leadership at that time. And so you couple that with, I will give the Trump administration credit for the vaccine and the research they did, because in the House of Representatives, they put the package together and and to fund this with and tens of billions of dollars. But you look at it and you don't see that in the news. The Trump administration slung it out there to all these micro research labs and everything, but they took money off the top. They funded a lot of their buddies to take money off the top because they're about getting their cut. And so after the vaccines were discovered that they were going to work, you can, being a military man, you look at General Williams, that is now the dean of Hampton University. He's the president. The president of Hampton, one of my alma maters. He should have been in charge of the distribution of the vaccines. Trump put him down so he could get a non-qualified white 3-star when he promoted to 4-star when there wasn't a 4-star slot for that, and put him in there, and it really jacked up the distribution of the vaccine. So it saved hundreds of thousands of people in the long run. Couple that now, you look at this anti-vaccine rhetoric that we hear. You look at the state of Florida, their Surgeon General. It says he is going to stop all dissemination of RNA vaccines in the state of Florida. Even though 8,000 people died in the state of Florida that they know of from COVID last year. And we're about for nationwide, we're getting ready to start at the beginning of the tridemic of this COVID right now, just because not enough people are taking the vaccines and the boosters now. And so this is a dangerous time. It is a dangerous time. We're getting ready to put a white nationalist possibly back into the White House. Just think of that. A white nationalist sitting up there, an orange white nationalist sitting up the White House.
Yeah. But it's not the first time.
Yeah, it's not the first time.
In the White House, we've had a white nationalist. We've had
a history of
presidents have owned
from
us.
Andrew Jackson to Woodrow Wilson.
Absolutely.
They never said it. They never
have
said that I'm a racist.
Right.
They never I'm a racist. He's come out and says I'm a racist. Right. He would negotiate this crap that he put out on this weekend about negotiating the Civil War. You know his negotiation was? Y'all keep y'all slaves as long as you don't succeed.
Yeah, let me play another audio. This is even younger person that can't vote, but it is a part of our future, talking about the age. How old should a president be?
Too old to be president.
Too old to be president is an age where you're scared that you might not live to see the next day, because a country is depending on you to run them. Also, as long as you don't have any mental health problems, like say you have dementia and you're sort of losing your memory a little bit, and people with dementia, they're perfectly good people, but they're probably not the best kind of person to run a country because they might not remember everything.
Yeah, you're eerily describing what.
But yeah, now Mark, age has been an issue that's brought up, and Colonel talked a little bit about that, and it doesn't come up, but people say Biden is the oldest man running for president right now. If he wasn't in the race, Trump would be the oldest man running for president right now. So what's the difference? Anyway,
let me comment on that difference. To me, that 3-year difference between them is immaterial. Effectively, they're the same age. They're definitely the same generation. And so, with President Biden, whom I respect, unlike his challenger, you don't know when age will catch up with you. All it takes is a stroke, and that can happen at any age. I had a coworker who had a stroke in his late 20s, but a stroke can mean the difference between a healthy older person and somebody who can't do what needs to be done. You mentioned President Wilson. The last part of his administration was effectively administered by his wife because of a stroke. Let me say a couple of other things too while I still have the spotlight. I understand how government works. I've been a student of government since my first civics class back in middle school. And despite the fact that I am totally unenthusiastic about a second Biden presidency, I have been contributing. I've already written checks to support candidates in the race for the Senate and the race for the House. I even wrote a check the other day on Senator Kane's recommendation for a special election in the Virginia Senate, which is coming up on the 9th. So I am trying to help the overall process of governance. Uh, the president can't do it alone. There needs to be what we have in Virginia, thank goodness, after the blue wave this fall. We need a blue House and a blue Senate at the national level to get what needs to be done done.
Well, I want to say welcome to, hold on, let me get back to welcome, Leah. How
Thank
are
you.
you?
I'm
Let me,
not feeling very hot this morning, James.
oh, okay. I'm sorry to hear that, but thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Uh, are you able to make a comment on something I have to ask you?
What are you asking me, James?
It depends on what I ask you. I'm kind of switching the comments, trying to get all this in, what can affect the election this year. As we think about the evangelical people, the churches and things like that. And Trump has recently made a comment about how he was sent from God,
Mm.
and he even has a advertisement, I guess it was put on by the evangelical that, I mean, you have to see it to believe it. I mean, it's like, I can't believe they put out something like that. They have him, they're portraying him like he was just sent down here to correct everything that's wrong in our country. So, and you're talking about those evangelicals, a strong force, a strong voting bloc that, influences people, that some go blindly to whatever they push out there. So what do you feel about that? I mean, now he's using that. He's throwing everything out there, and don't forget about, he's in court every week, just about, but all these other things he's pushing out there, but he's using religion now, what he always has, but he's really putting it out there now, saying he's sent from God in order to do these things. And imagine the people that he's going to influence just making those kind of statements.
James, it's truly amazing. People who profess to be Christians can bring in a person like Trump and can revere a person like Trump, whose history proves that he truly is not following the faith. Yet and still they come on. It's almost a cult type situation taking place with those individuals. And it's so much so that they want one thing that they want and they negate all the other things that he has done. I just find it extremely, extremely troubling when I see people who are of faith who are following a man such as Trump. I can't fathom it. I was listening recently to a service in which they spoke about how these individuals are going to be exposed, and I pray that that he will be exposed truly during this time, because we cannot have a person such as Trump in the White House. Um, I would love for Joe Biden to be a younger person, but I think in the times in which we live and the conditions of the world, you need someone who's pretty seasoned, of a sound mind. Trump has not even proven to be of a sound mind. He don't even know who he's running against. He's saying he's running against Biden, and I mean, the things that he says, it shows you that his thinking is not on level. He knows nothing about Christianity, and yet and still, these people are just blindly following him. I mean, it feels like a Jim Jones type of situation taking place with
Mm-hmm.
the evangelicals, as well as many of those who follow him.
Yeah.
They are not looking at him and truly who he is, what he does, what he says. It's just that their mindset is that the world is changing. The world is becoming more people of color. They don't want to fathom the fact that the world is changing, and they want to hold on. They want the total control. They want to stay in power. and they'll do anything to stay in power. They'll put anybody in there who they think will keep them in a place of power. I mean, you see it taking place. You see it taking place on the elementary level with the lessons that are being taught. You see it taking place on the college level with them moving these presidents, because talking about this diversity piece. You know, they don't want to deal with the fact that the world is changing, and they don't want to come up to the plate. It's going to happen. So regardless as to who they put in office, the world is still going to change. It's not going to stop it. So he can keep as many immigrants out of this country that he wants to keep out. It's going to happen, and they need to deal with facts. And they're
Does
just
that
not.
include his wife? No, uh, yeah, Ray,
Yeah.
and thanks, Leah. And we're talking about the strength of those evangelicals. And, you know, in the 60s and early 70s, the strength of our movement was in the Black church. How important do you think it might be now for the Black church to step up and you know, and be safe with the IRS, but to step up as individuals in the church to make sure that that movement is as strong as it was back in the day?
Well, you know, James, speaking about Trump and what he's trying to promote now, you know, what it says to me is antichrist.
Exactly.
And that's very scary.
It is.
Not in this respect that those that believe know, you know, but
Y'all
time,
remember the movie The Omen?
yeah. But remember how things are evolved back from the beginning of and the creation of this earth. You know, it was majority. You know, if you know and have read, you know what has been uncovered as far as you know how where creation started and where it began. You know, it was predominantly of color back
That's
then,
right.
and we're evolving right back to that
Right.
now with all of the immigrants and people that are you know trying to come in and trying to move all over the world, and they're not only coming to America, you know, like you said, there's democracies in other places, even in Europe, even in Africa. So they're moving all over the world to get out of from under these dictatorships. It just behooves me. It is very tragic. It is very unfortunate that people have allowed Trump. I mean, and it's black and white folks. I mean, it's all kinds of folks have you know bought into this cult mentality, and it's just unbelievable when you look at all of the things that are out there that's been exposed, all of the charges, and when he just thinks that he can do whatever he wants to do, and that's his mentality. He's never cared about any any people, any color other than himself. And but what hurts me, I guess, is how our folks you know, buy into this, you know, and they're hard, man. I mean, I know some of them, you know, personally, and I've gotten into discussions with them, but I can't take it, but so long because you know the information that they're giving you, and they'll constantly refer you. Let me show you this on the internet. Let me show you that on the internet. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and I say I don't want you to show me anything. You know, I know where to go for to get information. You know, and we just have to, you know, I mean, push as hard as we can, especially to the young folks, to get involved, to stay involved, and point them into to the directions for information, even if it's not coming in the force and the numbers and the kinds of media that we think it ought to come. It is out there. Information is out there. They are finding this crazy stuff, you know, a lot of the Trumpeteers, and they go to it, you know, and that's what we have to do. Look at MSNBC. That's the classic example of even our folks that are on the cameras now, that are talking, that are anchoring, that are and the information that they're giving you, is real, and it's information that's out there on the internet as well. But you just have to know where to go. So all of this stuff about Trump, and it to me is all in people's mindset. To me, I have to take you back to church again. It's a sign of the end times.
It is.
And
It is,
anybody
Ray.
that
It
believes
really
in the
is.
Bible and knows, this is where we're headed. No one knows when that hour and day is coming, but we are in the signs.
I
Wow,
think,
Dr. Fairfax.
yeah,
I
can I
think
jump in
we're
here
going,
real quick, Mr.
go
Overton?
ahead, Doc. Go ahead, Doctor.
Sister Leah, so good to see you. Glad
Thank you, darling.
you joined us. But when you spoke about the way in which people who are supposed to be believers are are pandering to Donald Trump, what they are pandering to is whiteness.
Exactly.
What they are
Exactly.
so religion, their religion is really their whiteness.
Exactly.
And all that it brings in this earthly life that we exist in. And so he is their patron saint when it comes to rescuing and preserving a way of life that means anti-blackness, that is predicated upon black submissiveness, black powerlessness, black profaneness, black inferiority. And we need to be crystal clear about that. And I think that we need to then explain to our people that the way in which our ancestors understood God is not the same way that people who claim to be believers, who claim to following a pure supreme God is not the same. It is or else the evidence is in the treatment of people. The evidence is in the policies that are passed. The evidence should be in budgets. Budgets are moral documents. And so, you fund who you value. You defund or you don't fund who you don't have any regard for. So that's the evidence that we can provide our young people. But I really think we've got to be really targeted with our discussions with our young folks, because there is a level of confusion when it comes to understanding who they are as Black people and understanding our history and their role, their place, their position at this moment in the trajectory of the Black freedom struggle. And so as a community, that's a very different conversation that we need to have with our young people.
And Dr. Fairfax, when you speak about that, the sad portion is that our young people just don't know their history. They have no concept of the history. Many, I've not say all of them.
I know
many don't know their history and don't understand the struggles that individuals went through in order to get them to where they are today. They seem to sometimes think that they just evolved into the place in which they are, and not that people really paid a price. People died in order to give them the rights that they are just not taking advantage of during this day and time. So I agree with you. We have work to do. We have work to do with our young people. We have work to do with some of our older people as well, who truly tend not to understand what's taking place and why it's taking place. It's scary. It's scary right now. I'm at a scary place now. The thought of a person of Trump's character can actually become the president of the United States again, and democracy will be lost completely. Um, it's a scary point in time, and I guess it makes me negate Joe Biden's age because he's seasoned. He's seasoned, and if Ah,
I mean,
no.
I'm with you, and there's just such a larger conversation because I couldn't understand why the Democratic Party would not groom and prepare
Thank you.
other leaders while President Obama was in the White House.
Exactly.
And so, but we know why. We know
Yeah.
why. We know that there is there's leadership that wanted to maintain, a status quo, and Joe was going to do that.
Mhm.
So the idea is that Barack Obama was supposed to be Vernon Dixon, so that the other leaders of King's generation would come forth. But the leadership of the Democratic Party did not want that. They did not want more change. So they supported Joe Biden because he was safe and
That's
he
right.
represented the status quo. The Democratic Party, to some degree, did this to itself.
It did it to itself. It did. It really did.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I don't know. My concern or my platform as a social scientist is I'm about rescuing and ensuring that Black people are clear.
Mhm.
Because the Democratic Party, quite frankly, haven't invited Black folk at the table to really push this discussion. So we need to ensure then that Black folk are clear, and we're clear about our role in this struggle and what it means for our community. Because the Democratic Party really zoned out, and I think that's another conversation. I'm not willing to throw it all out, right, and vote the other. But the Democratic Party made critical errors in not ensuring that the Generation X would ascend to the platform of leadership. All respect to the boomers in the room.
Yeah,
You know,
you're so right, Doctor. You're so right, Dr. Fairfax. We don't have enough people out there. It goes back to the old days when they figured if they have one, that was enough.
Right.
And they have the vice president out there talking. They feel like that's enough.
Yeah.
Okay, we got one out there talking, and they haven't, pushed other people out to the front that need to be to the front. The ones that are out there probably don't need to be out there. Anyway, Leah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And you think about the fact Kamala was pigeonholed for a long time. She was given duties that there's no way in the world she could have been successful in handling. And they should have utilized her better. They're now beginning to utilize her more because there's a need. But they pigeonholed her for a long time and kind of put her in the background, had her doing things that she would never excel at. But they need her now. So they're pushing her forward now.
And I think that's the quandary. I think that's the quandary that you're speaking about, Sister Leah, and the Colonel spoke about. So that I think there are people who are clear in our community that at this point the Republican Party is functioning nonstop as a white nationalist party.
Exactly.
But I think the Democratic Party, however, has functions in and out of those lines, and the sidelining of Madam VP is an example. You need to have a very different messaging when you have a Black woman occupying that space. It can't be the same messaging utilized for VPs before her. It's got to be different and significant to who she is and what she stands for. And you're right. She's coming out of the gate more because they realize that they need her.
Mm-hmm.
But it should have been early on. Should have been early on. They held her back and gave the opposite side's chance to sort of criticize her and say all these things. Where is she? She's supposed to be. She was doing what most vice presidents do, sit in the background. But they should have, from the beginning, they knowing what they had, they should have had her out there in the front from the beginning. And now they're playing catch up, and hopefully it works. But they need to put some more people out there of significance out there to get that message out there.
Can one thing that we all have to keep in mind too, if you know the history and involvement of the Democratic Party and then what they're trying to accomplish, these days, the Democratic Party, which is different than the Republican Party, is they try to be all encompassing. They try to not be too slanted towards any particular, person of ethnic authenticity. They try to, and the way they're thinking, the way their mindset is, they want, to show that everybody is included and that everybody is, working for the same goals, and sometimes we lose sight of that when you look at politics. Politics, we know that as a people we've been behind and we're trying to catch up, but there's folks that have led the party that have really kind of failed in knowing how to manage the complexity and the types and the many kinds of folks that are part of the Democratic Party now. And some folks have a narrow view and a narrow focus, but my knowledge, having been involved in it half of my life, and listening to some of the conversations, they're still consistently trying to be all inclusive, and we got to keep that in mind, that it's not all about the black folks, the white folks, the Hispanic folks. It's about all of these people, trying to represent them all, and the leadership has failed in really knowing how to respond and how to make that come back to the public. And that's something that they're suffering now. We know in the beginning, this was way back, was flipped as far as the parties go. But now, it's a different time and it's different situations, so many things are coming at us in so many different directions. And the Republican Party, the anti-Semitic folks are all in fear, like that's already been said by a number of you. They're in fear of losing. They're already not, they're already moving into the minority in this country because of people of color, and they're fearful of that. So they're trying to maintain and hold on, but they're losing out, and they just have to realize that times change, people have changed, and we're all in this together. We all.
Yeah, but we kind of not though, Brother Smith. I'm not. I gotta push back a little bit.
I know we're not, but
we're kind of not.
You're talking realistic. I understand that, but what I'm trying to say is what they are trying to do, what they are failing to accomplish. But that's the mindset they're trying to do that. It all depends on the leadership of any of this. The leadership of the Democratic Party, the leadership of the Republican Party. We know where they are, but I think we don't give the party enough credit. To try to come up with a third party at this point would be disastrous. There's no way that that can happen with the way things have evolved, and that's my point. If you really look at what this party and what this administration has done, it's too many things to number. So, and folks have to keep up, and folks have to read, folks have to listen, they have to learn, and they have to want to know where to get the information from. But we know we still got a long way to go. Don't get me wrong, Dr. Fairfax. I understand, and you're right. I know that, but we still have to be optimistic that we can still try to march on and try to reach as many as we can.
One conversation always leads to another. But look, as we wind down, Mark and the Colonel, do you have any last statements before we close out this session?
So, just a personal note relevant to something said before. I'm on my way this afternoon to get my 4th booster shot.
I know that.
The war isn't over.
You're right about that.
Yes, and I'll comment here, and what Ray said, talked about the third party. There is no way a third party can exist in this and have a chance in this country, because a third party will never get 2/3 or actually 270 electoral votes. So a third party only blends away support for the ruling party or who is in or from right now it stands for, will bleed away votes from the Democratic Party and elect the orange man to the office. The other thing is the Democratic Party and the White House do have a messaging problem that we've all talked about. And with that, they should be, if I was the president or king or president for the day, I would say everybody in my White House and anybody that is an elected leader or a appointed leader, give a news conference every week. Every week when you're out on the road, you need to talk about the gains that we have done since we've taken, been elected and assumed office. And the other piece I think Dr. Fairfax had alluded to, and we started the conversation, is the young folks. You have to tell them, okay, you were dissatisfied with police reform because it didn't get through. Who stopped that? And not just say Congress stopped it. No, the Republicans in the Senate stopped police reform.
The White Nationalist Party.
Yes, the White Nationalist.
White Nationalist Party.
Yes. And you want voting rights. Yes, it was passed in the House, but it was stopped by the White Nationalist Party in the Senate again. Yeah. You want a student loan repayment. The White Nationalist Department stopped it. But my administration, meaning the administration, has gotten multi-billion dollars of loan repayment going around these folks. And so we're still working on that. But who was against it?
White nationalists.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think you talked about reparations. Reparations never got to a vote, even in the House or the Senate, when we had all three branches. And theoretically, nobody had decided if they had the gumption to do it, how would you administer it, and how would you come about it? And to me, that is a bridge too far in a discussion that will never happen in my policy that will never happen in today's society. And that's just me. So, but the last thing as I pull back is young folks, you're living in an age of where you have less rights than your father, your grandparents, and your great-great-grandparents. You can look at the Supreme Court, and I'll say Supreme Court, who is actively taking your rights away. They're taking your voting rights away, which a lot of the bills, and you had to spill those out. Women's health care and the Abortion Act, they took away a 50-year right to have health care or abortion, whatever you want to use for that, took that away. Now you can look at state of Texas. Young lady had to almost die. Had to leave.
That's right.
And they were criminalized to go after her husband, to sue him because he wanted to save his wife. Utah has a total ban on abortion. That means you have that ectopic pregnancy, and you can look up what ectopic pregnancy or any kind of problem with women's health is. You cannot get health care there. So we have created two different levels of health care for women in this country. One, that you can have that, or you can go down to you look at the Confederate states, and that's where we're at. I rest my peace.
And Colonel, don't leave out the young Black woman who had a miscarriage, and they now have her on trial. Yes, because they say she didn't handle the fetus correctly.
Yes.
You know, I mean, all of these things need to be taken in place. But on my last words, I want to share with you all, one of our 90-year-olds, Miss Clarine Roberts, sent this, James. Clarine says, when Donald Trump says he could have stopped past President Abraham Lincoln, he criticized the legitimacy of President Barack Obama. Could this evil spirit be the Antichrist in chapter 13 of Revelations? Are we referring to our God-given manual?
Oh, I love Mrs. Clarine.
That's Miss Clarine Roberts.
I love her. I love her.
I do too. So
I love her.
So I said her message is right on time. So
yes, and tell her thank you on my behalf.
Most definitely.
That's why we love focusing people like Clarine Roberts and others on this show that are in their 90s. That have lived those times that we talk about, that we
Yes,
talk about.
yes.
Anyway, I
Wait a
want to
minute,
thank
and
everybody.
Mark, I need to get my boost as well. I've been dealing with this cough, I think, for 2 weeks now that I just can't seem to shake it at all.
So, Leah, you haven't been listening to the Colonel. Colonel's been telling us
I know.
what we need to do. But anyway, but look, I want to thank everybody for being here today. And you know, like I said, one conversation leads to another. This Thursday, we're going to focus on more the local. You know, they say all politics are local, so we're going to focus on making sure we get it right locally first, because it directly affects us. You know,
Directly affects
the day after the election, it affects us. Well, at least the next of July. So the local and the state, we had some historic things happening in the state this year. So we're going to focus on that this Thursday. But anyway, before we go, I want to highlight this guy right here. He had a birthday over the weekend. And I think he hit a milestone there that I'll probably hit later on this year. We pretty much the same age. So I want to say happy belated birthday to you, Ray. And, you know, just keep on trucking. I mean, you're still out there doing some things that you did when we were in high school. No, well, not all those things. Let me take that back. Good gracious.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Your wife might be watching. But anyway, I just wanted to wish you a happy birthday. And thank you for your contributions to Portsmouth Culture Talk.
Happy birthday, Mr.
Happy
Smith.
birthday, Ray.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Still trugging along, still trying.
Yeah, and thank everybody. We appreciate you, and especially our special guest, Dr. Fairfax. Special guest now. We're gonna have to elevate you to a guest host because you've been on here quite a few times. If you've never turned me down,
It is an
whether
honor.
it's in the evening or in the morning. So we really appreciate you. And like I said earlier, when we start focusing on the 7 cities in Hampton Roads, you know, Hampton is going to be one of them. And I think we don't do that enough. And so we can sort of create an atmosphere of regionalism, you know, by starting here and making sure that we all work together. All our cities have their niche that we can focus on and come together and be a great area of Hampton Roads. So working separately, but together at the same time. Anyway, thank you, everybody, and be aware, be informed, and most of all, be involved. We'll see you next time.